Welcome back to another episode of the RinkMasters podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Krum. I'm joined today with Noah Dreger. How you doing, Noah?
Oh, I'm pretty good. Since Chris isn't here, I'm living the dream. I think I'll just kind of fill in for him with that one. No, but I'm pretty good today. We're recording. It's Monday actually. Oh man, time flies. But yeah, the Canucks just came off of a win tonight. Demko stood tall. I believe it was 44 saves. So I'll take that.
Oh, that's awesome. Demko's looked really good. And I would say it was a gutsy win for the Canucks, but, they got a valuable 2 points. And let's see if they can continue that playoff push.
Absolutely.
All right. So today what we got lined up is we're going to start off with our interview with Cougars top prospect, Riley Heidt. I hope you guys really enjoy that. Following that, we will be having our discussion on NHL owners. Noah's got this idea that we should talk about the involvement of owners and the part they play within an NHL franchise. We're going to touch in on that. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the discussion on the return to play for the BCHL and the Western Hockey League. Well, it's been a long time coming. So without a further ado, let's head into the interview with Riley Heidt. Welcome, Riley Heidt, to the RinkMasters podcast.
Yeah, nice to be here.
Hey, thanks for coming on. So for those listening, what is it like growing up in Saskatoon?
Yeah, for sure. It's one of those rougher parts, but it's awesome. No, it's a smaller area, and it's good, great hockey community, and it was fun growing up there and getting to play with all the buddies and stuff. So that was awesome.
That's awesome. And so, your family was deeply rooted in hockey. What was it like growing up in such a hockey crazy household?
Yeah, for sure. There's no days off. It's especially in the wintertime, it's lots. It's nice to have a bit of summer just to hang out with the family a little bit. But no, in the winter for sure, everyone's at hockey and parents are traveling all the time, and it's good, but it's busy for sure.
That's awesome. So you grew up, as we know, you grew up in a hockey household. Who was really the one that really got you into it and that you looked up to?
I think all of them, honestly. Probably my whole family, but more my brother, and obviously he's older than me, so I've always wanted to compete against him and try to be better than him. So I think that helped push me to get here, and obviously I think I helped him a little bit too to push him. So I think it helped both of us.
That's awesome. And so you often played up a level because you were just very skilled. What were the advantages to that? But also, was there any kind of some cons to that option?
Yeah, for sure. I think there's going to be a little bit of both, but obviously it's good to play against better competition and play with those older guys and build your maturity up a little bit. But yeah, there's a bit of cons. Like you're not gonna. They're obviously bigger, so it's quicker and faster. So you got to be better out there. But there's not. I wouldn't honestly say there's a con. It's more just being able to have the opportunity to go up and play.
That's awesome. So, your older brother, Tyler, decided to go play college. That's what he took. Was that something you kind of weighed in your mind, or were you dead set on playing in the Western Hockey League?
Yeah, I think I've ever since I've been little, I kind of wanted to play for. I've been growing up watching the Blades and stuff in my hometown. I wanted to go play in the WHL, so I think that was something I've always wanted to do. And then when I got my name called there, it was awesome. I was just gonna be happy.
That's awesome. So when you were when you grew up in Saskatoon, going to those Blade games, which Saskatoon Blade did you look up to the most?
I don't know. I don't think I had one really. It was more the whole team. I don't know. I was pretty young there, but I obviously liked watching Kirby Doc too and stuff when he was there. That was not too long ago, but yeah, no, it's good looking at all of them and trying to get better.
That's awesome. So kind of heading more to the Western Hockey League draft, sometimes the top picks, they know who's going to take them before it even happens. Did you know that Prince George was planning to take you at 2?
Yeah, for sure. I had a clue. They talked to him a little bit, but I know it doesn't really hit you until your name actually gets announced. Like it's not for real until it actually happens. So that's awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so like, what was that feeling on draft day heading in, right? Was there some nerves or?
Yeah, for sure. It was, I didn't sleep the night before, I can tell you that. So I was just thinking too much, but it was total relief when my name got called there.
It's awesome. So when the Cougars picked you, how much did you know about the Cougars organization, and was there a level of excitement coming to a team that has really been building a good young core?
Yeah, for sure. I knew a little bit about it, but not too much, obviously. And I knew a couple of guys in there from the draft before and stuff like that, so I knew it was going to be awesome. It's a great experience to get up here and meet everybody and stuff. So that's awesome.
It's awesome. Yeah. So, COVID has definitely, created some obstacles this year for in terms of just being able to develop and get some ice. What have you been doing to just keep ready as you can for the season this year?
Yeah, I've just been training here, and I'm obviously not in quarantine, so I'm just trying to work out every day and stay active. And you can't go leave the house, so it's a little tough. But just work out in the basement and do as many little things as I can to keep going.
That's awesome. So, the Cougars, they're going to be bringing you into the bubble this year. How excited are you to finally get into some WHL action and to be back on the ice after such a wild year?
Yeah, for sure. It's been a long time since I played games. Like I played 5 or 6 at the start of the year with my midget team in Saskatoon, but that was pretty short. So I don't know. I've been waiting a long time to start to get to go. So the first game is gonna be exciting for sure.
Well, definitely. And so do you have any like personal goals you've set for yourself heading in? What do you hope to achieve in this short season?
Yeah, I don't know. I think just our team winning and stuff like that. But I don't know. It's obviously play one game at a time and don't think about that stuff too much. If I think about that, I don't play my best. So I think I'm just gonna go in there, play one game at a time, and go from there.
For sure. So just kind of finish it off, for those who haven't watched you play, how would you describe your game?
Yeah, I think I'm pretty skilled forward. I like to set up guys, and I think I'm a pretty offensive forward. Obviously, it's you got to play defense too, but I like playing offense. So it's yeah, no, I think I'm a high speed, skilled forward.
Sounds great. Well, Riley, thank you for this interview. Welcome to Prince George and best of luck this season.
Thank you very much.
All right, thanks Tyler for that interview with Riley, and thanks Riley for coming on. It was great to have you. Hopefully we can have you on again sometime. Hopefully after the season, just to kind of talk about how it went for you. I know there's lots of people are really excited for you to play, so yeah, it's going to be a big year. So Tyler, onto our discussion of NHL owners. Obviously, different NHL owners have different roles, different involvement levels, but what are some of the critical roles played by an NHL owner?
Well, I think the most important role for an NHL owner is making sure that the paychecks are being signed and that the team is being properly funded. The NHL, it's a big billion-dollar league, and when you look at the costs to run these facilities and for team expenses, I think that's where it is. And if I'm like an NHL owner, I don't know, I don't even think I'd want them to be overly involved with the day-to-day stuff. I just want to make sure that they're there, that they're paying the bills, keeping the place open, keeping the team funded, and that they're doing their part in marketing the team.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I think and we're going to talk about it, sometimes when NHL owners seem to meddle a bit too much, or sometimes when they meddle too much too late. And sometimes I think part of that is that some teams, as far as I know, there's still some teams that don't have a president of hockey ops. Correct me if I'm wrong.
You might be right about that. I'm not entirely sure, but
I know more and more teams have been adding it. Some it's their GM who also plays that role. So, I mean, it's a little bit messy in some teams, but that role, like they almost serve as that because other than the GM, they're then the next highest. All right, which means that I find in those organizations it seems like there's more ownership involvement. And again, we're going to talk about that, whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing. So Tyler, how much would you say like owners do impact on average the day-to-day operations of a team? I know it's it's a tricky question. I want to see if you have an answer.
It really depends, right? Because every owner or ownership group has their own idea of how the team should be run. There's owners that believe that they're going to hire the guys that are knowledgeable about the game to run the teams and to just, like I said, sign the paychecks and let them make the decisions and trust them to to do right by the team. But then there's some owners where they get a little too hands-on, and that starts to put a little bit of a stranglehold on the working relationship with your general managers, your coaches. And I mean, we see plenty of examples like that around the NHL for decades. One of the more noticeable ones was what was happening with Pittsburgh and Jim Rutherford. I mean, obviously he resigned for personal reasons. That's the very
supposed personal reasons.
it's a very, I would say, politically correct way to go out. But I think we all know that there was more going on there. I think Rutherford was looking to make some big deals. He was looking to change the shape of this Pittsburgh Penguins roster, and I think the owners didn't see eye to eye, and of course that causes tension with the general manager, and then ties end up being severed. And I think we see that a lot more often than some may think.
Yeah, I was actually going to say, and I forgot to mention this, and what are some of the roles of the NHL owners? They're also on the NHL Board of Governors.
Yeah.
Right. So they take a big role in kind of the general direction of the league as a whole. And I believe they also are part of the decision making for rule changes and stuff.
Partly, yeah. I mean, again, they're the ones with the $1 billion investments involved, right? So they want to make sure they know where that money's going.
Yeah, and obviously now more so than it used to be, it's incredibly expensive to try to own an NHL team. I know, especially as an example of expansion, it was $1 billion to join the league. If correct me if I'm wrong, for Seattle.
I think so. Yeah, something like
Yeah,
that.
and
It was a
then
ridiculous amount of
was
money.
it 500 billion for Vegas?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so it's extremely expensive there to enter the league and to become an owner. So obviously I think they are held in some esteem, right? And they're involved in some pretty major decisions for the league. So we also can't forget that as one of their roles, obviously. I mean, so you kind of already answered this a little bit, hinted towards your answer. But should owners really take an active role in the day-to-day of the team, or in the circumstances where they do they need to appoint other people to take that role from them?
See, every organization is going to be a little bit different. I feel like if you're an owner who has a strong history within the league and within the sport of hockey, then I think it's somewhat okay. But you're still going to ride that fine line of stepping on the toes of your general manager and your personnel. So it's all going to depend on the dynamic, the people you'll bring in. If you're bringing a general manager in and you intend to be more hands-on in an owner fashion, then you got to make sure that general manager knows that you're bringing in. You got to make sure that he understands that you want to have say and that you want to have involvement, and to make sure that he's okay with that. If not, then you're just going to be setting yourself up for a lot of hurt and failure.
Yeah, so kind of with that in mind, where do you think owners have taken, you can use historical examples or more recent examples, but where do you think owners have taken an active role in their team, but that it has actually hurt the team? If you don't mind me starting, I have a great example, Vancouver. I think that the Aquilinis in general have done a good job there, but there's been a few circumstances that have been a little questionable. For example, that somehow Gillis managed to fire Vigneault first, and then shortly before Gillis himself was fired. It just, especially if the ownership was considering firing Gillis, I think it's pretty embarrassing on the organization that that Gillis would have been fired after Vigneault was gone, because at that point you wonder, was Vigneault the breaking point? At which point, why didn't the ownership convey that to Gillis and say, listen, if you fire him, you're gone. Right? Like, it just reeks of a weird meddling situation. And then even after that, it felt like at the start of the Jim Benning era, it seemed like the ownership was kind of pressuring him to put together an incredibly competitive team with a aging roster, to be honest with you, right? Like, in the roster that was definitely in decline. which again pressured Benning into making moves like signing Louis Eriksson, which at the time was seemingly a great deal. I mean, he was right around 30 years old. I mean, he
I
had
think he was
great,
just turning 30 at that
yeah,
point. Yeah.
yeah, and like he had a great chemistry with the Sedins before,
Coming off a
playing for Team
35 goal
Sweden.
season.
So, pardon?
He was coming off of a 35 goal season with
Oh,
Boston too.
oh, absolutely. And he was being pressured to put together a competing team. So for Benning, that was a slam dunk of a deal, right?
Yeah.
So obviously it hasn't panned out, but I think that's a circumstance where ownership pressure has forced a GM into a trickier situation that's now really hurting the team.
For sure. Yeah, no, it's definitely, there's a risk to be taken there, right? Because I think sometimes, and I mean, this might be a money thing for owners too, right? I mean, if you're watching the games and, if you have a particular, if you're anticipating or expecting a particular amount of results and success, and you're not seeing that being achieved by the team and the roster, I mean, yeah, there's definitely that temptation to try and like steer the ship in the direction where you want it to go, instead of trusting your personnel to do the job that you've hired them to do. So, again, it's a real fine line. I mean, sometimes it may pay off. Maybe the owner does know right, but I think more often than not, I think that's just not the case.
Yeah. So is there another example where you can think of where an owner is hurting the team by the action or by the lack of action?
Lack of action. I mean, honestly, I can't think of one right now. But there's one organization that comes to mind in terms of just having perennial problems within the organization. And I think that's the Buffalo Sabres. We were talking about this a bit before the pod, but we know that the Pegulas aren't exactly very much liked. Now, I don't know all the ins and outs of what actually goes on within the organization.
So we're not going to pretend like we do.
No, we're not going to pretend like we do. But I do think one's got to wonder if the ownership group is the reason why this team is not doing anything. Because, I mean, look at how many coaches and general managers have been brought in and out, and players, and they've had good players come into the organization and then leave, and nothing's ever changed. It's still been completely underwhelming, and the organization continues to be a bit of a laughing stock. So I think that's one thing to look at. I think the ownership is a prime example there, where maybe they're a little too involved. Maybe there's a lack of professionalism, and that organization has a terrible morale.
Well, I was going to say actually two organizations, and it's ironic because they joined the league in the same year, and even weirder, they played in the same conference for was it just 1 year or was that a few years?
I remember.
But anyways, like I think that in Buffalo, right, like they've had so many good pieces. Like I think this year they had an excellent team lined up. I don't think anybody expect how you just looked. I think they only have 6 wins right now.
Yeah, and they're on an 11-game losing streak now.
Right? Like this is embarrassing. And as of recording this, they just lost 6-0 tonight. And they have some good pieces like Rasmus Ristolainen. He's actually having a good season.
Well, you look at their offense, right? I mean, they brought in Eric Stahl, who was still being a very productive second line center for the Minnesota Wild previously. They brought in
like what 50 points or something
like
year?
that. Like he's still a second line guy. They brought in Taylor Hall. They've already got Jack Eichel. Like Sam Reinhart's there. Sam Reinhart he's a good player.
And even Jeff Skinner, he's shown that he can be a good player. He's just had a bit of trouble the last little while.
He's just had a rough year, but like Skinner himself, yeah, he can be a serviceable player. And Victor Olofsson, you look at the defense, Rasmus Dahlin, Rasmus Ristolainen. I mean, Linus Allmark's a pretty good starter too. Like they have
even Carter Hutton's a good backup. So
yeah, he's a good backup. Like they don't have a terrible team on paper. Like on paper, this team should be at least fighting for a wild card, but instead they're racing for the bottom again. And that's just, it's kind of sad to see, right? Because they're a team where you want to expect good things from them. And it just seems like no matter what they do, they continue to take a dive for the bottom.
Well, and see, it gets even worse when you consider the fact that Eichel was finally supposed to be the player to turn that around. And the fact that it hasn't, really makes you wonder how deeply seated this is in the organization itself. Now,
Yeah.
there's obviously the argument that sure that neither the Canucks or the Sabres have done well since they entered the league. However, the Canucks have come to the brink so many times. They have put together a hyper-competitive team many times already, right? Like they have come so close. I believe they've been to 4 cup finals,
Something
3 or
like
4
that. Like
cup finals.
they've got a pretty good track record of good playoff runs.
Yeah, right. Like, and they've had some great teams. It, and especially recent, like, and even in the last, like, from when I've really been in hockey, the last 15 years, when I've really been paying attention, like, I'm not 15 years, I'm not that old, but
You're
more that I
old,
know
man.
about the last 15 years, the Canucks have put together better teams than the Sabres, right? And they've come closer, and they've had better organizational building. So, like, what the heck is going on in Buffalo? And like you said, I think the owners need to take some of the blame for that. I think they either need to sell the team or really take a look at themselves, because something is not working there. Eichel should have been the turning point.
Well, yeah, and I mean, you look at that team. At one point, they also had Ryan O'Reilly on the team, and he was so, like, he was a good player, right? And he was a guy that they're like, oh, we can build around this guy. And you could see he was getting extremely miserable by the end of his time in Buffalo, to the point where, like, he admitted to the media that he's lost his love for the game playing in Buffalo. He gets traded to St. Louis. What was it? 2 short years later, he's lifting a Stanley Cup, and he won the Selkie. Like,
Mhm.
come on, right?
Well, not
So,
even just Ryan O'Reilly. So I don't know
but
if you remember this.
that's just like the best example of someone that was completely in the dumps, especially when it came on a personal level with the game, because of playing in Buffalo, to now, like, just winning the ultimate prize, getting that Stanley Cup.
I was going to say another interesting player situation in Buffalo that I can think of was Cody Hodgson,
Yeah,
right? Like, he was a pretty talented player, and then he even played well in Buffalo. I think it was for
for a
2
couple of years.
seasons.
Yeah,
And then he just fell off, retired, and stepped away from the game. Right?
Mm.
Like, it's pretty incredible because he was a good player. He was able to put up points. There's been rumors of attitude problems and stuff. But I mean, when you go to Buffalo and when you really try to give your all for that team, he was one of their best players in those seasons. I think in one of those seasons he put up over 60 points.
something like that. Buffalo it's an extremely tough market to play in. I think, and it's tough, right? Because I mean, they signed Taylor Hall, that 1-year deal. I mean, do you think he's really going to re-sign now? I
And
don't think he
Eichel
is.
apparently wants out, which is even worse considering he's the captain. Now,
Yeah.
again, there's debates whether or not Eichel really wants out, but at this point,
Uh,
if I'm Eichel, right, and
mhm.
it's a very bad team situation in my mind. Why
I
would you
will
stay there?
I will say this. I think we've seen a bit of a shift in the way he is on the ice in Buffalo within the last couple of years, from where he entered the league to where he is now. I don't think Eichel is the type of guy that's going to straight up, flat out say that he doesn't want to be in Buffalo. But I do think that there's a sense that he wants to win, because he's a
Look at
talented
Connor
player.
McDavid, even like he's dragging like okay Edmonton teams to the brink of the playoffs. Like, obviously they've had some ups and downs already with McDavid.
But
Look
they
at that
showed,
team that they're building around him, and look at the
yeah,
organization trying to succeed. Obviously it didn't work with Shirelli, but now they've brought in Holland, right? Now they have
and
new
he's doing
coach
a
in
great job.
Tippett.
He's
And
doing a really
and
good job.
yeah, and they're looking better as an organization. There's a much bigger sense of optimism in the
Buffalo does
organization
not have that.
that that's just not in Buffalo, right? And obviously, some people would say, "Oh, it's taken Edmonton longer than they expected with McDavid," and I understand that. But the point is, now the organizations are trending in complete opposite directions, and they were drafted in the same year. They were like lots of people even had Eichel going first in that, right? And and that's just what makes this so sad in my mind for Eichel. Like, I mean, he
Well,
needs to be at a better team.
well, and ultimately, I mean, like, I think a trade is definitely just inevitable at this point, and it's going to be for the betterment of Eichel. I mean, Eichel's going to go to a team hopefully where like they're going to be more in a position to make a playoff run, and then at the same time, now Buffalo could potentially benefit from that because you can only imagine the type of ransom that a guy like Jack Eichel's going to receive for you.
Yep. Okay, so here's my next question. I think though you just answered it in a way. Which teams should be sold, if any?
Yeah. Well, Buffalo is my number one on my list for sure. I mean, we can already safely say that. Um,
Next on my list is okay, and I understand that it's new ownership, but I don't understand this new ownership group. Some of the messaging that they've put out, the Arizona Coyotes.
Hmm.
It's a really weird situation in the desert right now because they're not playing in Phoenix anymore, right?
Oh,
They're playing out of there. Like the team's been okay, they're getting better. The ownership group says they're not moving. There's rumors that said they might be moving, they might be selling. I just think that soap opera will never end as long as they're playing there or until they can actually find a better arena in Phoenix and actually get some people to start going to games. I just that soap opera is never going to end, right? Like,
the location is so bad in Arizona where they play. I mean, it's in the middle of nowhere, right?
yeah.
Which how are you supposed to, if your team isn't really like a playoff contender every year, and in fact, hardly even a playoff team consistently every year, how do you expect your fans to make the 45-minute drive out to Scottsdale?
Yep.
Right. It's just you can't expect that from them. And I mean, I think you got to go look for a similar situation. I think would be the Ottawa Senators.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously Eugene Melnyk, he's definitely been in the limelight a lot, and not for good reasons over the years. But I think that's another organization. I mean, yeah, they got a lot going for them right now. I think Pierre Dorian's doing a really good job as a GM, assembling a really good young nucleus there to grow. But that's only gonna be it's only gonna be so exciting for so long until the contracts are gonna come up. And are we gonna see Eugene Melnyk loosening the grip of his purse, or is he gonna be gripping even tighter? Because I mean, we've
Mm-hmm.
seen what he's done with players coming through the organization before. So that's another team that we got to look for, right? I think hopefully Eugene Melnyk learned his lesson and he's willing to pay these guys, especially you guys like Tim Stutzel, who eventually are going to demand big money. But that's just something to keep an eye on. I think that's a potential team that should be sold.
And then the next one I had was, I think, yeah, Florida. Because here's the thing, especially this season, they are, and I've seen a few power rankings. They're ranked in the top 3 to win the cup this year.
Hmm.
They have a really good thing going down there. And obviously, yes, there's COVID and there's obviously less people that are even allowed in arenas. and this is what's sad about it, though. I've seen so many jokes and memes that this is still average attendance for the Florida Panthers.
Yeah.
And they have
Yeah.
a big arena there, right?
Yeah.
Like it's a big arena and they're putting together a good team. It's so out in the middle of nowhere. Like
Yeah.
like it's not even in Orlando.
No.
Like and I think that ownership, like, unless they can find a new arena location, and here's the other sad part, it's not even an old arena at this point,
No, it's
right?
not.
So like it's just kind of like a tragedy of that's a state that isn't a historically hockey focused state, and now you're trying to build an organization. Why in the world would you put your arena in the middle of nowhere? Because it's also hurting them in ticket sales. Now you can make the argument it's more expensive to find somewhere in the city. It's harder.
I mean,
Yes.
yeah, I mean
That
that's I would put money. That's exactly why they did it. It's exactly
right.
why
But the
Jan
problem
Melnick put
is,
his in the
does
middle of
that
nowhere.
really help you
Oh no,
if you're
I
not
don't
selling
just
any tickets
no.
anyways out in the
I get
middle
what
of
you're
nowhere?
I get what you're saying, and I agree. Like it's ridiculous to put an arena in the middle of nowhere, and in the long run, it's only going to cost you more money. But I understand the thought process in the moment of an owner. You want to build something as fast and as cheap as possible, and you're gonna pick some location on the side of the highway in the middle of nowhere. You're like, yes, we're gonna put it there. Um, it's it's dumb, right? Because I mean, we look at some of the best arenas in the National Hockey League right now. They're in their downtown cores, and there's a thriving economy around it. Uh, I don't know how an owner can sit there and be like, yeah, we're gonna put our arena in the middle of nowhere and expect fans to come to our games, especially in a non-traditional hockey market.
Well, and that's just what
Nonetheless,
makes it so much worse. And that's where and here's the thing. Okay. If you're in one of those franchises, right? In a non-traditional hockey market like Arizona, why are you being so stubborn about not relocating your franchise if you're not willing to even move your arena?
yeah,
Like it just reeks of we're just stubborn. Like,
well, 100%.
right?
Um,
And yeah.
yeah,
But
but speaking on the relocation part of it, let's transition to that. You know, where would be the best candidate for a relocation? And I've got one, and I've got it in mind. Now we know Seattle's entering the league. They're likely going to play in the Pacific Division, move the Coyotes to Houston, and then move them to the Central. And now the West has an equal balance, and everything works out just fine.
yep.
And that way Dallas can get a bona fide Texas rivalry, and that would be sick.
Yeah. Well, see, and so I have two main locations. There's actually a few that come to mind. But one of them is Quebec. Obviously, it keeps getting brought up in conversations, but it has a great arena there,
Yeah.
great hockey market, and it's a place that really wants it. Now you can make the argument, um, that it's like, well, does it really have the legs with the Montreal Canadiens there? And that's a fair argument, right? Especially from the NHL standpoint. But are the Arizona Coyotes really making them more money than what could be made in Quebec? I don't think so.
No, they're not.
Right? Like that, it's as simple as that to me. And even with the Florida Panthers, and this is why it sucks for them, because I love that team. I love that they play in Florida. But with the arena so far away, why? Like, you have the team in Tampa, and it's actually a downtown arena, is great, and they actually have a great place to build success there. They've had a successful team for many years. They can
Mhm.
get people to the seats. It's also easier because it's downtown arena. Florida, it's like, why are you doing this to yourself?
Mm.
Right? Like, are you really making more money there than you would up in Quebec? Right?
Right.
Like
Yeah.
that's my question, right? Like, are you really making more down there, or are you just doing it to try to grow the game in a way that really won't have success if you're not getting anybody to the games anyways?
Yeah. No, fair enough.
All right, so let's quickly hop over to the return to play, the WHL in particular. Is that's where most of the drafting comes from, or is the CHL? So kind of, Tyler, obviously it's a bit interesting in the BC division. So who do you think, who are you most excited to see play this year?
Well, obviously our boys, the Prince George Cougars, we're definitely a little bit starved for some PG Cougars hockey, but overall, I mean, I'm really excited to see everybody play. I can tell you all these players are going to be playing balls to the wall. They're missing it. They've missed it. They've been counting down their calendars, and now it's finally here. But I mean, on a more specific note, I'd say the Kelowna Rockets, solely for Caribou Hockey Products, Scotty Cousins. He's going to be playing for them this year. I mean, he's a player that I've watched play again since he was 8 years old. You know, he's played hockey with my brother.
Stalker. Just kidding.
Well, I mean, when your brother's on the ice with him, you're going to be there watching. But no, it's cool. I think it's cool. I feel a little bit old because some of these kids that I've seen play for years are now playing in the Western Hockey League, and I think that's really dope. So I'm really excited to see Scotty play. I think it's gonna be a good year.
Yeah, I'm particular in terms of player. I'm really excited to see Riley Heidt play. See what he can do and bring some excitement back to the Prince George Cougars that has been waning a little bit. So I think that we need somebody at the organization who's projected to go high in the NHL draft, and we have a few of those now, right?
Yeah.
So
Oh, yeah.
we need those in Prince George, and I think that this could really be the start of the turning point for the Cougars as an organization.
Well, yeah, like really, this is going to be the first glimpse of what the next 4 to 5 years can look like for the Prince George Cougars.
Assuming that he doesn't blow the entire league out of the water and gets called up to the NHL a year early.
Yeah. But not just for height, but I mean, we're going to have, Gronick, we're going to have Dohaniak, we're going to have Zemer. Like we've got some pretty good young players coming into the lineup this season. And I think we're going to really get a first glimpse of what these guys are going to be capable of. And that's exciting. Like, yeah, lots of new faces, but they're talented new faces, and it's going to be some good hockey.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, and it's going to be great to see that. Hopefully, we can watch some games, maybe get in a few interviews during the season.
For sure.
Just check in with the players. So, Tyler, why don't you take us out?
All right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning into the RinkMasters podcast. We're glad that you guys could be here for this episode. Make sure to tune in next week. Go like, follow, and subscribe on our social medias. And bye for now.